Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to SuperCoach Edge, and of course, another edition of Damo's Team Talk. This time coming out of round 14, and interesting round. Let's just have a look at how we went for the round, and ended up scoring a 2,035, which, as it turned out, I thought it was actually a half decent score looking across my various leagues, but as it turned out, it was slightly below par from where I'm ranked. Ended up dropping 74 spots to now sit 10,703rd overall. And I don't know what to make of it. I mean, heading into the round, I had a full allocation of 23 players, including the flex, of course. And my primos, by and large, they actually scored quite well collectively. Very few players actually had an RDO for the first time in a fair while, which I was pleased with. And thank you to those players for finally pitching in, especially the primos. But yeah, it was a very strange round because, yeah, expectations going in, I thought I would have made a little bit of ground, but seems as though there may have been other people or other teams that were in the similar boat to me where they had a full team to select from. May have been one of the easier buy rounds to cover. But this time coming up for round 15, round 16 especially, that I think is where the cream is going to rise to the top. But let's just hope that we have some sort of consistency with our primos for the remainder of the next two buy rounds. But let's have a look at our team in detail and go line by line. And of course, in defense, Jack Sinclair, 109, has been, as I said, in recent weeks, one of the more reliable players in our team now. One of our more recent trade-ins as well. So, I think in terms of what he's been able to produce since coming in, incredible. 124, 131, 143, 113, and 109. So, really has been just the rock of consistency that we can lean upon. Max Holmes is another guy that has really stepped up his game in recent weeks. 155 on the weekend, which was just by far and away more than what I was ever expecting. And over his past, we can even extend it back to 6 weeks. He scored 134, 76, 128, 107, 152 against Gold Coast last week, and then 155 against the Dons to eclipse that as a season best score. So spoke about it last week as someone that a lot of you non-owners out there, I was encouraging you to bring him in or at least consider it. And that is the reason why, because went up 39.1k as well and is just a touch under 600k in price. So now over 60.3k in price, which is kind of is increased over the past couple of weeks alone. So still, I think, really good value and probably now edging towards the top 6 defenders in terms of average. Let me just have a quick look at that. And in fact, he is the 3rd best scoring or averaging defender thus far. So I think he's definitely someone that you want in your team. And I started with him in my team, and I'm just thankful that he's finally turned things around and taken his game to another level. And that's all we want. That's really all we want. We have, of course, Jordan Clark, scored a 96, kind of par for the course for him. He does have a couple of, ceiling games here or there, but by and large, he's kind of a consistent type player, much like a Adam Chera, where he can score 80s, 90s, and then pop off the big scores of the 120 plus. But, 96 on the weekend against North. I was expecting a little bit better than that, but is what it is, and we will take that. Now, Lockie Whitfield, 140. Finally, we see a ceiling score from the great man with the golden boot, I like to call him, because he can kick a footy. He is absolutely incredible with his disposal efficiency. I think he's averaging over 80% across his entire career, which is insane. So I brought him in, against Carlton, and he... it might have been against Richmond, actually, but no, I think it was against Carlton, but that was the first game where he was pushed forward, scored an 82. Richmond scored a 116, an 84 against Port Adelaide last week with that hybrid, defensive forward role. And then he finally, Kingsley saw the light and put him back to his usual role where he could just feast on the footy back in defence and scored the 140 against the Lions. So thank the Lord for that. Arrested his price drop and actually increased 12k on the weekend. So really good price point for those of you who don't own him at 545.1k, and I would highly encourage looking at him. And I think, with that role change, it was always going to be temporary. There were some moving parts with guys who were out through injury, Callahan being pretty much a key cog. that started the whole thing, the chain reaction where Toby Green went into the midfield and Josh Kelly came back and so on and so forth. So things were moved around and Whitfield was pushed up forward because of out of necessity. They've finally got Callahan back in the midfield, and off the back of that, Whitfield went back to his usual role. So again, praise be the Lord. Harry Sheasel scored a 115, and yeah, again, a bit of a hybrid role, but still scoring okay. 115 I think is really good, but 137 the previous week against West Coast probably speaks more to the quality of opposition more than anything, but has been okay. Apart from the couple of down scores against Richmond 77 and the 63 against Collingwood around 11, he's actually been okay. A lot of people have kind of been thinking, it's danger signs and the sky's falling type stuff, but it's not as bad as what he's actually producing. And I know it's frustrating with the change in roles, and as I just spoke about with Lockie Whitfield, it tends to be happening with a fair few players. Merritt's another one from the Dons as well. Just coaches doing stupid things, but if you're still producing decent scores, we'll take it. And with Shees, we definitely will. Dane Zorko, finally, another guy who has been really topsy-turvy, finally found a ceiling score after a couple of bare weeks where he scored a 66 and 80, and on the weekend against the Giants scored a 123, which was a welcome return to a ceiling score. So still dropped 16.6k in price and is priced at 505.6k. So, a relative bargain for those of you out there who are looking for a defensive premium. Dropped 89.5k in total off his starting price. So not too bad if you are looking for someone in that market, but we'll take it. We'll take it. That's probably the theme of this round. Matt Carroll scored an 82 out of the box, and I was fleetingly considering, moving him on and trading him down to sort of cash out the, what would it have been, 80k or thereabouts odd profit that he's made. As I said, went up 21.7k off the back of this 82 against West Coast and has increased now 110k on the dot in profit. So a really good cash cow. A lot of people traded him out heading into the weekend, which is probably fair enough. A lot of people would have gone to McCarthy, who ended up scoring well more actually than Carroll on debut. So tip the cap to those of you out there that made that exact move. But even if you haven't, I think people might be looking to do that over the next couple of weeks, either with Carroll or someone else down to McCarthy, who is that bottom priced 99k. Now, Carroll has a break-even of 11 heading into this game against North Melbourne. I do think he will keep his spot in Carlton's side, and yeah, he's actually playing half decently, and in a Supercoach sense, even better. Angus Clark, 29, so he was on my bench with the emergency. Pulled a little bit of a shifty here. I should undo the changes here so you can see the actual way that my team, shaped up, because I did make a couple of switches when Supercoach was opened. Now, Angus Clark, he was in the emergency on my bench, of course, and playing quite early, I thought, okay, well, here's a chance to have a little bit of a look at his score. If he didn't score well, I could put Matt Carroll on field, and that's exactly what I did. So Angus Clark, 29, not the best. I mean, has scored okay in his first two games, and the 29 you could probably let slide. Now he's played 4 games, should say, but scored the 44 in his second game against Brisbane, and outside of that, he's scored an 97 and a 71. So has increased already off the back of 4 games, 81.8k. So really has made us a fair bit of dosh, and goes into the next round with a break-even of 15. So probably right for the picking. Hopefully he does surpass the 100k mark, and then we can look to trade him on, and might be a nice sort of trade down to McCarthy. Sardell Hooley still out with that injury. Moving on to the midfield now, and Bontempelli. Now, he has been a very, very frustrating first couple of week own, because, it's funny to say because it's Bont. He's, probably one of the more reliable guys in Supercoach. He's got a 101 against Hawthorn on debut in my team, and then was held to a 66 courtesy of a Win Hager tag, and geez, is it frustrating. More so because of the fact that I brought him in thinking that, he's got some really good form against Hawthorn, really good historical form against St Kilda, and then he's got Richmond coming up, and Sydney, and then North Melbourne. So I was like, let's get him in. He'll drop a little bit of price against Hawthorn, still at a high break even, but against St Kilda, gee whiz. Like, very rarely does he get tagged and get impacted by tags. So he dropped 42.1k and has now dropped in total 94K off his starting price. So for those non-owners out there, you're going to get him at an absolute bargain. Still has a break-even of 177, but you can't pass up the fact that he's facing Richmond. He should do an absolute number on them. I know, famous last words, but he scored a 135, 153, and a 122 in his past three. Surely he doesn't get held to a shit score like he did against the Saints. They're not going to tag. So if you don't have him, look at him very, very closely. And in fact, bring him in. 587, I didn't think he would drop below 600K. That was the other part of the reason why I brought him in early. I thought, you know what, just get him into your team and, he should be reliable. Hasn't happened, but it's Bond. It's Le Bond. You got to back him in. So I had the vice captaincy on Bond. Didn't pan out, obviously. Scored a 66, so we left it at that. In terms of my captain, I'll jump to that quickly. It was Tristan Cherry with a 105. Very frustrating again. Left a lot of points on the table. I think he's scored around about 105 at three-quarter time, and I don't think he scored much in the last quarter. He was held quite well, and yeah, just really wasn't to be for Tristan Cherry, and yeah, just a strange one. He was coming up against the, two-headed beast in Jackson and Shrek/Hodor Darcy, but yeah, just a frustrating one really, because I was expecting a very big captaincy score. Wasn't to be, but at least it was better than Bond's 66. We'll take that. Zach Butters, now he was our trade in and was a little bit worried that he might have been tagged by, I think Langdon was doing the tag at Melbourne, and still scored the 101, which is okay. Still has, that's kind of a high floor score from Butters, and yeah, faces Sydney, so should bounce back, you would think. Scored a 164 in the round 6 clash against the Swans this season. Prior to that, 132 and an 89. So things will turn for Zach Butters. But to have these two big dogs in my team in Bond and Butters, just on paper, looks really good and makes me feel really safe, which is the main thing. Next up, we have Adam Chera, scored a 102. Again, as I said earlier, he's the real pillar of consistency. The 100s, 80, 90 scores, he's kind of ran about his floor. A few weeks back, we know he scored a 142 and a 122 against Sydney and the Giants. So he has that in his arsenal. And if he's scoring 100, it's one of those things where I think starting him in our team, we never thought that we would use him as a keeper. But I think the way that he's been so consistent with his scoring, it forces our hands virtually to keep hold of him, which we're happy with because he is doing a fine job. Caleb Sarong, finally, speaking of finally, like there's redemption round for virtually like Whitfield, Zorko, Sarong. It was off the back of, maybe last week I was giving him a bit of shit for, not being as reliable. But Sarong, I think this is the biggest score. In fact, it is the equal biggest, dating back to his round 4 score of 142 as well. But 142 against North Melbourne, I know is a paltry opposition. But finally, and I know his disposal efficiency wasn't the best, and probably his score should have been around about 160 odd, I think, 160 plus, had he, been a little bit more efficient, but wasn't to be. And it's just so refreshing, so many scores, just a nudge above 100, and we've been waiting for a ceiling score, and we finally received it. So we will take it, as we've said. That's the theme of the video and the round. Lachie Neale, now 103, started the round quite well, but really slowed down against the Giants. I think Bedford may have been switched to him at one stage or another, but was kicking goals and looked really good, and ended up just being a high floor score from him. So what could have been a high ceiling game wasn't to be. Nick Dacos didn't play, obviously, but he is on the field for me, because I was able to put the emergency on the new recruit in Zach Johnson, the rookie Dynamo from the Dons. And had he scored poorly, I would have put Clay Hall on field, but Clay Hall was always going to be the sub, I think. So I was crossing my fingers that Zach Johnson put in a very nice score, and that he did with an 84. And as such, put Dacos on field in order to claim Johnson's 84. So on debut, just incredible work from Zach Johnson. His past 3 games now read 48, 84, and then another 84. So went up 66.2K, has a break even now of negative 63, and should easily make us, he could be projected, if he scores a 57 against Freo with that negative 63 break even, he could increase another 50K alone next round. So he's going to easily make us 100K, push towards that 150K if we hold him for long enough. But really someone that we should be having in our team as our best option for cash generation from here on out. So get him in your team if you don't. And yeah, I imagine a lot of people already have him in their sides. Jai Caldwell just puts a smile on my face because he scored a 111 and he's been in my team for the past, 2 weeks now. He's got a 102 and a 111. Past 3 weeks, should say, 123, 102, and 111. So yeah, I was a little bit cautious about getting him into my team, but yeah, he's proved great value, I think. Being in that 440K mark, he's kicking goals, and that we like. Chad Warner had the bye, and Hugh Boxall didn't play in the Saints side. Speaking about Tristan Cherry, yeah, very frustrating with him. A lot of points left on the table, but is what it is. Rowan Marshall, now speaking of disappointment, this bloke here scored an 80 on the weekend. Excuse me, and against the Dogs, and went down 43K. We've had him for 4 weeks now, and we traded TDK to him back in round 10 against West Coast when he scored that 179, and he went up 42.3K. Then, since then, he scored a 55, 89, and an 80. Just not good enough. And we wish we would have known how long TDK would have been out for, because they didn't say with that larynx injury that he had. Turned out to be only 1 week, and we probably would have preferred to have held him for that 1 week, because Ron Marshall does not look to be a top 2 ruck. Max Gawn, yes, Tristan Cherry, and I think TDK is kind of rounding up the rest of the lineup for the top 3. Ron Marshall just isn't there, and we know that he's got this in his game where he can have these peaks and troughs in season. He did it last season. And, started really well, went poor mid-season, and then came good again towards the back end. He's kind of had, poor start, came good for a month, and then gone downhill again. Can he turn things around? Maybe. But now he's got a massive break-even, which isn't helpful. 127, faces the Pies, and, he's got a good scoring history against the Pies, 106, 123, and 124. But, yeah, just not good enough. When the Saints aren't performing well, that kind of dictates as to, how he performs as well on a SuperCoach sense. But that's kind of the tail of the tape there. Harry Boyd on the bench at R3, just not doing much. For the forward line, Baslenka, 114, had a heap of the footy. Again, disposal efficiency, not good enough, which has held his score down. But, we all love Baslenka, and yeah, he's going to be a probably top forward, I should say. He is ranked number 1 still for the forwards. So we'll take that every single day of the week. Actually, just speaking of Baz, I know because he was out the previous round, how many people actually got rid of him? Not many, which is interesting. I thought more people might have been more reactive. Only 0.8% of the competition got rid of him. So smart move to keep hold of him. Track now scored a 68. Speaking of frustrating, now I think we can kind of expect this, similar sort of scoring output to Chera, but when it comes to Track, he has that ceiling score that we expect a little bit more often from him compared to someone like a Chera, and scored a 68 on the weekend, which was well short of what we were expecting. Jack McRae, he finally made his return back from that punctured lung, scored an 87, and sliding doors moment at the time when Horne-Francis and McRae got injured. It was like, who do we keep? Ended up keeping McRae because I thought he was going to return sooner than Horne-Francis. Wasn't to be. And Horne-Francis came out and smashed out a really good score upon return. So is it regret? Maybe. But we might try and get Horne-Francis back into our team at some stage or another anyway. But yeah, that's it. Is what it is. Caleb Daniel, an 80. Which was kind of par for the course for him. Against, who did he play? Freo, which was okay. It's kind of the tail of the tape for him. A lot of his scores have been around about that 80, 90 mark. Hasn't really shown much of a ceiling this season, but has been consistent enough, which we will take. Isaac Rankin scored an 81. And he's probably another player as well. Like there's so many of these players here that are scoring 80s and very few opportunities to flash their ceiling scores. But yeah, I think he's is he still a top 6 forward ranking? Let me just have a quick squiz at that. In terms of, he's ranked 4th for forwards. So whilst it may look bad as like sort of a microcosm, if you look at the broader picture, he's still scoring among the best, top 4 forwards. So not the end of the world. Now, Elijah Hewitt scored a 76 and went up 28.2K, has increased in total to 28.3K in profit, which is incredible. His past 3 rounds have been 92, 85, and 76, and goes into the buy now. So has a break even that dictates, that he should probably make a little bit more money, but does he have much more money left in the bank? I don't know. So, being on the buy, break even creeping up ever so slowly. Like it's a 45, so it's definitely achievable when he does return. But being on the buy, could you use him now to potentially maybe do a straight swap to a Callum Mills? Maybe that's something I'm thinking about doing. We'll chat about that in the trade discussion coming up shortly. But Elijah Hewitt has done an incredible job, and I think it was kind of always the move for me to move on Hewitt when he was going into his buy. It's annoying because his good run of form and scoring has come as sort of a lead into his buy, where I was hoping it would be a little bit sooner than that, and it would have made maybe a little bit more cash. But to have made 228.3K when we were actually thinking about maybe moving him on back in, it would have been round 9, after round 9, I should say, against Richmond when he was priced at 291. He's made us an extra 60K since then. So we can't be too unhappy with that, and done his job more. He's done his job like massively. So we should be happy with that. And in terms of the bench, it's a rookie graveyard at the moment. We've got Campbell Gray from the Tigs, who is out with a knee injury. They haven't yet said as to when he's going to return. He has avoided an ACL, but they've said it is some sort of knee strain. So might not make his return until late in the season. Do we want to keep him if he provides flexibility with his, forward defensive DPP status? But I don't know if I'll hold out. And then there's also Cooper Simpson as well from Freo, who is going to be out for majority of the season. Projected to return round 20, round 21. Will he actually come back into the senior team for Freo if they have a full allocation of healthy players? Maybe not. So we might think about moving him on at some stage or another, but very hard because he's only priced at 143.1K, so we wouldn't be making much coin. And the late change that I did into my team, and I didn't really speak about it in the team talk last round, but it was, as you'll see here, Clay Hall is still in my team. Now, Vicentini was in my flex. Now Clay Hall is there. So my original plan was to trade out Clay Hall in order to bring Zach Johnson into my team. But with Clay Hall being named in West Coast team with their, finalised squads or finalised team on the Friday when teams were finalised, I was like, you know what? I might as well just stick with Clay Hall, because even though he more than likely will be the sub, which is what he was going to go up in price. His break even was in the negatives. And as it turned out, he scored a 30, which was okay. He came on late in the piece. I think might have been the last quarter or the back end of quarter 3, but still went up 17.8K, which compare that to Vicentini. Vicentini only went up, I think it was, 1.7K. And I was very, very daunted by the fact that Vicentini was facing Max Gawn and Jordan Sweet was back in Port's lineup. So I had to share the ruckload, and it was probably a good move to get rid of Vicentini and keep Clay Hall. As I said, Vicentini only made the 1.7K, but also only scored a 49. So, wouldn't have counted. I think Clay Hall didn't count either. Like that score dropped out of my best 18. So was nothing lost, nothing gained there. But what we did gain by trading out Vicentini compared to Clay Hall is around about 16, nearly 17K in total profit. So again, just do that as you're kind of weighing up players to trade out. Like Clay Hall was never going to really count. So I wasn't really thinking about his scoring on field. I was more so thinking about the profitability side of things and eking out as much cash as I can because of the rookie cash cow crisis that we've had and faced across the season to date. So that's kind of my moves there. That's what I did. I do have as well, since trading out Vicentini, a 131.6k in the bank to use with the 8 trades remaining. Now, let's have a quick look. Let's just optimize our side. And actually, we might just, make a couple of quick changes here. So in terms of guys on the buy, we have Track, Rankin, and Hewitt that I have on field that have the buy. Now, Track will go on the bench. Warner comes back on field after his buy. And Zach Johnson as well will come on field. We'll put Sheasel back in. No, we'll put Sheasel on the on field. We have to make some swings here and some changes. So let's just optimize. It's probably an easy way to do it. And yeah, that's the way to do it. So it means that we have, in terms of guys playing, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Then we have Carroll, who is an emergency at the moment, but we might try and swing some players around to get him on field. But yeah, at the moment, anyway, as it turns out, we've got 21 plus Carroll as the emergency, which we can kind of use him as a bit of a loophole. Faces North Melbourne. And we might do things that way. In fact, you know what we might do is we'll go Angus Clark onto the bench in defence because he plays first up against Freo, and we'll have the emergency. So if he scores well, we'll make some shifts, make some moves. Otherwise, we will leave him there, and Matt Carroll will be in the flex. So we might just sort of structure things up that way. But having said all that, let's move into our trade talk ever so quickly. Now, as I said, 131.6k. I am thinking about getting Callum Mills into my team. And as I scroll down, he is the second most traded in player at the moment. He's probably a target that I'm looking at. Horn Francis is another one, and Sam Darcy as well. We've only got 8 trades, so we need to be really, conscious of who we want to target and how we attempt to get them into our team. Now, Tom McCarthy, the rookie mid-season draftee Dynamo that played for West Coast, scored the 133 on debut, was taking kickouts and everything, looked really good. Great disposal efficiency as well. Bottom price, 99.1k with a defensive midfielder DPP status as well. So, he is someone that we all need in our teams, but obviously on the buy, there's no real need to get him into our teams as yet unless he helps get you a little bit more coin. So Callum Mills, as I said, we can kind of just go Hewitt direct to Callum Mills, and we might wait a week on McCarthy potentially and wait to see if we can get some more money out of Carroll, and then maybe trade Carroll to McCarthy in defence. And yeah, allows us that swing as well with that defensive midfielder status that McCarthy has. So we might only make the one trade, which is kind of a little bit boring, but outside of that, like Horn Francis has got a break-even of 131. Who else is there? Sam Darcy has a break-even of 147. The other player that I have been eyeing off is the man of Connor Rosie, but he's 534.5k, went up 8.6k on the weekend. He's owned by 34% of the competition and has been very, very consistent. Faces Sydney, Carlton, Brisbane, and West Coast over his next month. So do we try and get him in? Well, as it turns out at the moment, let's have a look at our team. And how many positions do we have to fill an upgrade? Well, we've only got the one, which is M8. And then we have our flex. That's it. So, at the moment, this is pre-trades, of course. Now, if we go Hewitt to Mills, that fills the flex spot. So Mills is a defender. That's the other thing we've got to factor in. Alrighty, so we're going to have to swing some DPPs here. So if we go Hewitt out, Petrarca shifts from the midfield into the forward line, which is, completes our forward line. And then we have to go El Hooley from defence to the midfield. That allows us to get in Callum Mills. Complete that trade, leaves us with 125.5k in the bank still. And what we would do is swing Carroll back to defence and then have Mills in our flex. Now, this is talking about how our team would shape up from here on out, outside of the buys, and we only need to try and bring in a M8 to complete our team, and then we have some excess trades to, have up our sleeve for injuries and, any sideways trades that we look to do. As I said, we have to think long and hard about who we get in after this. Is it Horn Francis? Is it Darcy? Is it Merritt? Potentially, is it Rosie? Probably comes down to, and we're going to be led by how much money we have in the bank. If we go Carroll next week down to McCarthy, that's going to leave us with about 110K, maybe 120K, depending on how much money Carroll can go up further, which we add onto the top of the 125.5K in the bank. That leaves us with nearly 250K to use on an upgrade, which we could maybe use on a, who could it be? A Clark maybe, if he can go up to maybe 250. That will leave us with, 500K to work with, and then maybe do another downgrade as well. And, that will complete our team, hopefully, with 5 trades in hand. And then we might just have to, sit back and monitor things, and then maybe look to do some sideways trades of Marshall to TDK, or maybe even a Gorn, if he can hopefully drop in cash, if that ever happens. But outside of that, I think we're pretty content with the way things are. We just need Primos to fire at the one time. With Zach Johnson at the moment in M8, it's not the end of the world. We can always, I guess, loop. This is outside of the buys, of course. At the moment, we've got Angus Clark and Carroll as our 2 defender bench players, which is okay. And I think we maybe look to move one, or if we move both of them on, I'm a little bit worried that we might expose ourselves, because if one of our regular 22 players on field, or regular 6 primos on field for defense, if they miss a game through suspension or through injury, we will need to have bench players covering at some point or another. So, McCarthy coming into the team will help that. So he will probably replace a Clark or a Carroll. But do we think about maybe keeping the other player, whether it be a Clark or Carroll? Or can we get away with McCarthy covering the defense and then maybe covering the midfield as well? Because we will have Sardell Hawley, which will be able to swing with McCarthy between defense and midfield. I just want to have a quick look as well at Zach Merritt, because I've been keeping a close eye on his price point. He dropped another 21, nearly 22K on the weekend. Had some very, very annoying roll shifts and hasn't been scoring as well as what he should. So he could be a cheap price point as well. Could be hovering around about that 500K mark over the next couple of weeks. Has the buy in round 16 though, so probably wouldn't bring him in as yet. But that's kind of how my team looks at the moment. I don't think there's any other changes that I want to make. I could bring in McCarthy, as I said, but there's no real need to. He's not playing. And it's not going to benefit me in any way, shape, or form, unless I want to use that money to bring in a Rosie instead of going for, a Mills, potentially. But Mills, he has a break-even at 34. So I think if you're going to jump on him, now is the time to do it. And, unless you want to pay a little bit extra, he is projected to go up about 20 to 25K if he can score an 86, which is, he's averaging 88 at the moment off 2 games with scores of 69, ding, ding, and a 107 against Richmond. So, yeah, I think he's probably the one I want to go for. Callum Mills, incredible price point, incredible historical averages as well. We might just have a quick look at him on DFS Australia, just to give a little bit of a context of what I'm talking about here and what we can come to expect from the Swan himself. Because when he was playing, so his previous averages across the years have been this is dating back to 2020, 101.4, 112.4, 115.1, then a 91.5, a 74.4, and at the moment he's averaging 88. I think he can definitely push towards that 95 to 100 mark. Probably comes down to roll more than anything. And, whether or not he rolls off defense, whether he plays in the middle, I'm not too sure. He's kind of been, rolling through defense at various stages. He has been taking kick-ins as well, which is good to see. Yeah, he hasn't had any centre bounce attendances regularly enough. Like, he had 14% in his first game in 2025, but didn't have any in his most recent game in round 13. So, Yeah, he might be rotated through there, maybe playing as a high half back, rolling across the wing as well. But yeah, I think he's great value for that price point. And, I can't say no to it, really, considering that we've had this rookie cash cow crisis, we'll call it. The well's been running dry, and we need to wet the whistle, so to speak. We need to really sink our teeth into Callum Mills, which is probably not a good way to say, but you know what I mean. But that's it, ladies and gents. In terms of captains and vice captains, I haven't had a look at that at all. Tristan Cherry against Carlton, TDK. I think TDK is giving up some points to opposition ruckman, so I don't mind TDK. Outside of that, Max Holmes plays a second game against the Lions at GMHBA in some really good form, so I don't mind him. Basilenka probably speaks for himself as well. Bont, he speaks for himself. When we talk about that, like he's playing the last game against Richmond, surely he has a day out. So I think the way that I'm looking at things at the moment, it'll probably be Cherry with the vice captain, and it will be Labont with the captaincy. Now, Cherry's going to have to go massive. I'm talking like 140 plus for me to have confidence. Normally, it'd be 120, 125 plus as the lock-in vice captain score. But considering Bont is playing Richmond, I think that sort of KPI, that benchmark has to be raised just a little bit higher than normal. But outside of that, we will go through, of course, our captains, vice captains in I'm the Captain Now in the weekly SuperCoach Edge episode, which will be making its return. Of course, apologies for the past couple of weeks. We have been unable to do it, but as you would have heard, and if you haven't heard that we've welcomed into the world, my wife and I, our first child, our baby boy, Felix. So that is the reason why we haven't had the time to do that. Of course, SuperCoach has taken a little bit of a backseat, and for good reason. So having said all that, we will be back. Liam and I, we have found a little bit of time to do it. And I think the short turnaround off the back of the King's birthday, heading into round 14, it was just impossible for me to do it outside of, family commitments and everything else as well. So apologies for that, but again, for good reason. So we will be back this coming round. So look out for that. Of course, the usual trades, captains, and the round remix. Bit of fun, bit of banter, everything else as well. So make sure to check that out. But that's it, ladies and gents. We might leave things there. As usual, any comments, questions, feel free to leave them down below if you are watching us on YouTube. If you are tuning in via the audio podcast side of things on Apple, Spotify, Apple, Spotify, all that sort of stuff, feel free to give us a like, give us a rating as well. And as well, if you have a bit of time, you can leave a review as well if you are tuning in to the audio podcast on YouTube. Give us a like, give us a sub. Apologies, my mind is mush at the moment, as you might expect, lack of sleep and everything else. So we might have things there, and I might get a little bit of shut-eye. So with that, ladies and gents, thank you as always for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.